some muscles aren't activating. So my right glute's not activating. My lower right back is tight because I have a much stronger pull on my right hand side because I dislocated this shoulder doing the cheese rolling.
There's more to life than just earning money.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, if you focus your life on experiences and purpose and things like that, you lead a happier and more successful life, I think.
I came in then of course you cycled the length of the UK, then you swam it.
He's doing a marathon 102 days in a row.
What? At least give me a big blur.
Sean, how are you, mate?
I've been less fatigued in my life, if I'm honest. So it's been 2 weeks now, and I'm struggling. Yeah, I didn't think I'd struggle. I've done long stuff before, In fact, the 105 is only the third longest thing I've done, but this one was relentless, and no rest days. Even one rest day in the middle or 2 rest days would have changed everything, but you just don't have that luxury on this. So yeah, I'm dead.
Do you think if you'd had a rest day, you might not have wanted to get back out there again?
No, I'd have definitely wanted to get back out. Yeah, I mean, my head was always good, mostly. I had a little wobble in the middle, but no, I would have. Yeah, when I sort of looking at my body and how it was reacting to the strain and the load, every sign said have a rest day, but it just can't, not allowed. It's not, you got 17 hours to do each full iron, and it's day after day. I mean, that's the whole point of it, really, the consecutive thing. As soon as you have rest days, you're not doing the record. So yeah, I didn't even think about it as in, I didn't let it get to me, the fact that I was performing not as well as I was hoping, but I still did okay times in the end, and I can sort of be happy with that. I got a bit slower, so I was slow the first month. The second month I was a bit quicker, and then the third month I got slow again. And that was strangely difficult to deal with in my head, because I had, I was always hustling for time. The first month I was slow, and then the second month I was quick, and then the third month I went slow again. And that was annoying because I sort of lost the hustle for time, and that was kind of exciting, getting quicker. So from day 2 onwards, I was, there was a couple of slower days and longer days, but generally I was getting a little bit quicker. But then when I picked up the hip injury around day 60 something, then my time sort of plateaued and went down a bit. So that was difficult to deal with in my head, because I was sort of hoping I'd got over all the injury risks, but I picked up this hip issue, and it was very painful from day 60, I think 4 or 5, I don't remember exactly, but running on the hip, was just excruciating. So I mean, it would have been, well, I mean, I thought maybe, obviously I couldn't take a rest, but I thought, how long would it take to heal, if I had the injury? And I've been off now, 16 days, and I still have the hip issue. So rest didn't even fix it. So,
that sounds like a bursitis.
It's what it is just like some muscles aren't activating. So my right glute's not activating. My lower right back is tight because I have a much stronger pull on my right hand side because I dislocated this shoulder doing the cheese rolling in 2009. So, it all sort of started with probably my over strong right pull stroke with an over rotation because of this left arm is rubbish. So there's a lot of issues, but I think it probably started in the swim.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the bike, I actually got some saddle sores on my right-hand side. So I think all I did is I tilted my hip at the wrong angle. It only had to be tilted a millimeter. And then that probably disengaged a couple of muscles, probably the glute. And then when I went into the run, it just sort of got worse. So I actually had to do quite a lot of rehab during it. So, halfway through at every feed station on the bike, I'm there doing the Superman pose and glute bridges and all this sort of thing, from day 60. And, but I had to do it, because I couldn't really, it wasn't super sustainable carrying on with that injury. I could do it, but I was just losing an hour's sleep, and that eventually would have caught up with me.
Do you breathe to the same side when you swim?
Yeah, and that's another thing. So I picked up really bad habits when I swam the length of Britain. So in my training, I was sort of a bilateral breather, but when I swam Britain, all the waves were coming in from my left, so I couldn't breathe to my left. So I just was like, well, I'll just breathe to my right, because then the waves would go through me, and I wasn't drinking a wave. And then on top of that, I started to get a lot of chafe on my wetsuit because I was swimming for 5 hours a session twice a day with the tide. So in order to combat the chafe, I developed this just terrible roll where I almost don't move my neck. So I've got this technique where I'm right arm dominant because of the left cheese rolling shoulder. I'm over rotating to stop the neck chafe, and I'm only breathing to the one side. So, it's just to try and get that muscle memory to change from swimming 900 miles up the length of Britain. Yeah, it was hard. It was very hard to change that. And it's on my to-do list now to go and actually see a proper swim coach to try and stop just the bad habits. Because when I actively think about it, I'm actually not bad at swimming. I can do, I'm not fast, but I'm not terrible. But I just forget and I get tired and fatigue sets in, and then muscle memory just defaults to the old swim style from the sea swimming days.
Sean, for our friends at home, we should just outline all that you or some of what you've achieved in case in the rare case they might not have met you. But it is sort of a bit of a unique club, the old ultra sport. But I first became aware of you when you ran the length of the UK. I think when I was preparing to do it, probably, I think I remember you throwing yourself in a stream on what I'm guessing was the West Highland Way.
On the run, I've thrown myself in quite a few streams, but that was between coming into Drumnadrochit that you can cross over. So I ran across the north coast first towards Betty Hill because I didn't want to do the A9 and A99. It was only 50 miles further, I think, for the whole length of Britain to go across to Betty Hill and then run through the middle. And you eventually come in at is it Dingwall, I think? But before that, there's another town before Dingwall where there's a big marshy area and there's a little old shepherd's hut type thing in the middle. And I'd actually stayed there before because I attempted John O'Groats to Land's End the year before and got injured. Mm-hmm. And so I knew of this place. So I ran over, and on the way there, I was sort of like, right, I'm going to go and have my little ice bath in a Scottish stream. And that's a funny story, actually. So Discovery Channel, when I did the reattempt, they said, oh, do you mind if we send camera crew? I said, you can send what you like, but it's, I'm not changing how I'm doing it for the sake of Teleland. And they were like, yeah, okay. And I was a bit nervous to start off with, thinking they might sort of, poke the monkey and try and get me to do stuff I wouldn't do. But they didn't actually. They were amazing. There was fly on the wall. They gave me a GoPro half the time, so half of it's self-shot anyway. So the scene, I'm like, I'm going for an ice bath now. And they're like, we need to get the cameras ready. I'm like, hurry up because I'm blooming cold already. So I get in the ice bath and they film it in the river, in the stream. I get naked. anyway, when it comes to airing it, about 2 days before, they said, "Oh, Sean, do you mind just coming and watching it? Because we need to fact check. You may have said some stuff that, in your fatigue state is slightly wrong, like dates and things and whatever." So I'm watching it, and there's this bit where I get naked in the stream, and there's no blur on me. It's like full nudity. I'm like, you got to put a blur on there, right? And they're like, no, we feel it's like really raw and honest. I'm like, just by the way, I think I've probably been to like 20 schools and probably told about 5,000 kids to tune in and watch this program, by the way, because it was sort of dubbed as a family-friendly thing. And they're like, "Oh, but it's post-watershed." I'm like, "No one cares. People just put it on record." And they were like, a day later, they emailed me. They're like, "Yeah, you're probably right. We'll probably do a blur." And then they blooming did the smallest blur in the world. I was like, "What? At least give me a big blur." So anyway, that's that story.
Yes. So picking up on your list of achievements. So I came in then of course you cycled the length of the UK, then you swam it, which was just beyond belief, thus being the first triathlon of Great Britain, folks. And incidentally, Sean's running thing is looking very much like Forrest Gump, which I think goes down very well with the public. And then I saw you getting all your bike together to cycle around the world in the fastest time.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I did, actually.
Yeah. Okay. And you've run across Iceland. Wonderful place, Iceland. I didn't run across it, but I drove a vintage Swedish Volvo army truck from Sweden to Iceland and did all the sightseeing bit. That was great fun. Eating the sheep's brains and the fermented shark, which both were delicious.
The world's longest triathlon, which was the triathlon around Britain. So I've done Land's End, John O'Groats swim cycle run, and then I've also done a continuous lap of Britain in triathlon form, which at the time became the world's longest continuous triathlon. And then I've got the across Europe cycling record as well, unsupported, which I will have for a while because half of that was in Ukraine and Russia. So that's off the cards now for anyone for a while, which is a shame, really, because I sort of have no interest in keeping records forever. National parks marathons, Kilimanjaro. I don't know. I'd have to go and check my own website now. All the things I've sort of forgotten half of them, I think.
And going back to your most recent endeavor and success, which, folks, as you just gathered, was finished 2 weeks ago. Yeah. This came off the back of the chap nicknamed Cowboy. Is that right? He did.
Yeah. Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence. Yeah.
And what was his thing? He did. So
he's sort of been Mr. Multi-Day Full Irons for I want to say about 10 years now, but it might not be that long. But he was one of the first people really outside of organized deckers and double deckers, and there was a triple decker in Italy. James was the first person to sort of do it on his own and go bigger than that. So he originally got the record for the most official sanctioned Ironmans in a year, I believe. I think it was 30 or something. It was very impressive. So, it's flying all over. That's one every 10 days, pretty much, which is pretty impressive. Then he went on to do 50 full irons in 50 states in 50 days, and he was inspired by Dean Karnazes, who did a marathon in 50 days in 50 states. And James was like, well, I reckon I could do a full iron, which has a marathon in it anyway. And that was very impressive. I remember watching that and going, whoa, that's phenomenal. And I thought of doing 100 back in 2018 because it was the fourth type of endurance record you can get. You get world's firsts, world's furthest or longest, world's fastest, and then the most of something. And the most was the one I don't have. I was the first person to swim the length of Britain. I had the world's longest triathlon, and I'm the fastest person to cycle across Europe unsupported. I actually was the fastest in total time, and then a guy did it fully supported after me. But yeah, so I was missing that one. So I thought of doing 100 in 2018 when I lived in the Lake District, and I even came up with a route, which in hindsight would have been terrible, but I came up with it anyway. Swimming in Coniston, cycling down towards Barrow and Ulverston, and then doing 2 up and downs down the quiet side of the lake, which again, none of them would have been good enough for the actual record now that I know what I know. But then other stuff came up. I got married, I had kids, COVID, and all these sort of things just stopped me even really thinking about it. And then, yeah, last year, I just sort of, it came back to me in, one day I was like, oh, I wonder if I should revisit that 100, knowing full well that James Lawrence had already done 101 now. So he did the 50 and then he broke his own record by doing the 101. And, I thought, oh, well, I wonder, as a just, could I do it? And I in my head, like the ego in me was like, yeah, of course I can do it. But then practically, you need a lot, it's body and mind, you can't just scrape by with a super strong mind and no physical ability. And the other way around, you can't be the fittest person on the world and, have a weak mind. So, and I think James even says that. And I totally 100% agree with him. It's 100% mind and 100% body. I was probably 80% body ready at the start. There's a couple of things I wish I'd done in the lead up to doing the 105. And if I did it again, which I'm not, I'd do a couple of things different to get a bit fitter,
What are they, Sean? Because I bet everyone's starting to know.
Yeah, so in my training, I did three of every discipline a week. So 3 swims, 3 bikes, 3 runs, totaling about 15 to 20 hours. And I think that gave me a good base. And I worked on my speed a lot. I needed to be quicker. I was good at the endurance stuff, but my pace was a little bit down. I needed to get 2 hours quicker, really, over the whole thing. So I needed to shave like 10 to 15 minutes off my swim, probably an hour off my bike, and about 45 minutes off my run to get enough sleep each night. But the one thing I wish I'd done is probably 2 months out, maybe 6 weeks out, I wish I'd done a week-long bike packing. So just jumped on my bike with a tent and a bivvy and a sleeping bag and just cycled for a week, morning till night, like 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock, go to bed, like I did doing all my bike races and records. Then I wish I'd taken maybe a week off and then done the exact same thing running and just done a long run, fast packing, West Highland Way. Oh, that's too short, really. But just leave my house and run for a week. Then I wish I'd taken 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off and then done 5 full irons in a row. And I probably would have done that a month out, I think. And I did think about it. I nearly did it. And then I chose not to, because what if I got injured during the 5? But now I'm thinking, well, actually, if I got injured on the 5, I probably would have got injured on the 105. So it would have been a good tester to see whether I was prepared. And I picked up some niggles in the first week, which I could have worked on had I known those. If they had come up, I could have worked on those little strengthening exercises, or and I think actually the week-long bike ride and the week-long run would have strengthened up a couple of the weaknesses I had, which caused me issues in the first 10 days. So that's what I would do different. So if anyone's up for breaking my record, that's what I suggest you should do. Because and also if you plan an early enough start date, so mine was April, which gave me, I worked out that up until day 25, and if I picked up a little niggle that made me miss the cutoffs each day, I could probably still recover and still reattempt this year, because I could probably go through till October. But yeah, it was it made that first 10 days hell. I mean, it was always going to be hell, but yeah, there's hell in fatigue and then there's hell in picking up a knee injury that really I've never had before. You know, I got a knee injury on the bike. I never get knee injury. I've done 100, no, not quite. Where am I? I've done 80,000 miles on the bike in the last 10 years. I've never had a knee issue on the bike ever. I get it on the run, but I got it on the bike this time. And I'm like, wow, that never happens. What's going on here? Yeah, I mean, people say you can't train for it, and it's sort of true. You can't train for it, but there's also an element where you can make yourself a little bit better prepared than I was to just make that first week more manageable. And then once you're on the front of the wave with sleep and recovery and your times, then it becomes more sustainable. Whereas I was just lucky I was able to claw out the back of the wave and get on the front of the wave again, because, you know, the Warriors, you get so slow that you don't get enough sleep. So the next day you're just as slow or even a minute slower. And then you're on a downhill spiral, and then eventually you can just never catch up with time. You know?
You're in sort of deficit then, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you take any painkillers, Sean?
So I try to avoid them as much as possible, because when I have done sort of, especially ibuprofen, which I definitely try and avoid, I did have it a couple of times on the run. And it did exactly what it does always to me. It gives me a terrible technique, because all of a sudden I don't feel the pain I should feel, and I start slapping the floor, and I wake up with really bruised feet, because I often run a bit harder because I don't feel the pain as much. And yeah, I buy myself 15 minutes potentially, and a pain, you know, not as painful run. But then I wake up the next day so fatigued. My legs are so fatigued because I've just had a terrible technique. I've got a good technique mostly, but the one thing I do is I just flat foot it and just slap the front of my feet, and they get really bruised. I never heel strike. I sort of have this weird little slap thing, and you can even hear it when I run. Like other people running next to me will hear me like. So yeah, I tried to avoid it as much as possible. But when I started getting the hip thing, at around day 60, I would have one thing of ibuprofen halfway through the run. But it just, you know, it was a bit of like, oh, well, what do I do? Do I suffer through the run and avoid another injury, or do I just take the edge off it and hope that I'm not slapping the feet? But yeah, that was sort of the only time I had to take it. But ideally, I just don't want to take it. Because this, especially with ibuprofen, because you can actually feel it can get rid of the pain that can get worse, which will lead to long-term injury. So it's definitely not recommended. And I never went anywhere near your daily limit. I sort of stayed at a quarter of what I could have taken in the day. But no, it was yeah, I had to a little bit, but not as much.
You had a lot of support, obviously. I know lots of people love to get involved, or some people love to get involved, don't they, in these events? How was that? Did it ever work to the negative, where you're just thinking, "Oh, just fuck off, mate"? This. What? I'll tell you why is. There were when I ran the length of the country. First of all, I ran Scotland pretty much on my own. Yeah. With the exception of a former regimental sergeant major friend of mine was kind enough to come up and run for a day with me. But the rest of it, I was on my own. I was in my mindset, in my groove. It was great. And then once people started to join me, it either went one or two ways. Either they did every single thing I asked of them and would have bent over back, or they kept trying to lead me. And I found it really, I'm not going to swear here, folks, but really annoying.
Yeah.
You like grabbing my arm to cross the road, and I'm like, look, you know, we got to Cornwall. I've run 970 miles. I'm fine, please.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, how was it?
Yeah, it was. You know what? I was nervous, as you say, for all those exact reasons. And sometimes you just don't want to speak to anyone. But I sort of went into it with the mindset of, right, I'm inviting people, so it would be rude for me to then be an idiot and just, you know, because people traveled a long way to come and join me. And I actually really loved it. I was surprised because I am inherently a loner. But I did like it. I mean, I'm not always the chattiest person, and I sort of, if there's maybe a couple of people who thought I was rude on a day where I was a bit grumpy, especially when I was trying to focus on my technique on the run so well that it didn't cause any more injury. Just thinking about my cadence, thinking about how my feet are landing, which part of my foot am I landing on. I was starting to land on the outside of my right foot because of the hip thing, and then that was leading to other stuff. And I'm just so in the zone, and I'm a bit of a terrier where I just get the blinkers on and red mist, and all I can see is the finish line. And if someone's asking me questions about things, I can often just give one word answers, and I apologize now for that, but I have no brain space for anything else. I didn't do any social media during this whole 105 days. I mean, I checked my Instagram messages like maybe 5 times just to see if there's anyone I knew there who needed a proper reply to. And I would write my own updates every day, and I just gave them to Justin to upload for me. So I really was super hyper focused. But yeah, what did annoy me? Two things sort of annoyed me, I guess, is if someone had a terrible running technique. So if they were like scraping their feet or like slapping them or something, and they were like right over my shoulder, that would annoy me. Or if they were just real heavy breathers. And I was running slow. I was doing 5.5-hour marathons, but sometimes people would come for a lap and they'd run on my shoulder and just be like, and I'm like, geez, guy, are you dying? Please, you can call an ambulance. But it wouldn't annoy me enough to sort of do anything. But yeah, no, the community side of it, which is one of my 10, there's 10 pillars of endurance, which is planning, experience, health, food, water, sleep, muscle management, motivation, community, and
steroids.
Yeah, no, what's the other one? Planning, experience, fitness. Yeah, planning, experience, fitness, health, food, water, sleep, muscle management, motivation, and community. And the community one was the biggest surprise to me. Just the number of people who came and joined me on the bike and on the run. Some people came on the bike, joined me like 35 times. Doing 100 miles a session. And I couldn't. The imposter syndrome part of me was like, why are people doing this? But then I sort of worked out that people were managing to clock big miles in the week by without having to plan, because we would on average do about a 6-hour 100 miler. A little bit quicker, 5.5 hours for 100 miles. And, if you want to do that on any other day, you got to arrange with your mates to all, come together and pick a route and blah, blah, blah. Whereas anyone knew they could just jump on my course, when I was there, and we were guaranteed to do a fast ride on like a Tuesday, which you'd never normally get to do. So it's this real community came around. And then even on the run, Caroline, my wife, she came every Sunday and she did half marathons for the first half and then full marathons every Sunday for the last 8. Then there was Tuesdays Nicola, who came every Tuesday. That's what we called it, Tuesdays Nicola. She landed up doing, I think 15 marathons with me in the end, because she did a few. I think she did the last week. She did a marathon a day, so she did 7 marathons in 7 days with me. So yeah, it was amazing.
Matt Pritchard joined you.
Matt, yeah. So because he had the half iron record back in 2015, maybe. And I joined him for a full day when he did that. And he's come and joined me a few times. When I ran John O'Groats Land's End, I landed up having this crazy lock-in until 5 in the morning.
Yeah, that was on telly, wasn't it? I saw that.
Yeah, and then won my triathlon around Britain. We actually went to the same pub, but had a different landlord, so we didn't get a lock-in the second time, annoyingly. And so he's doing a 300-mile running race.
Yes,
on the 8th of September here in Llanberis. So I'm going to go there and offer my support.
He was on the show yesterday, and I love Matt. I've been following him for years, and I said to him, I'd come up and support you for this brutal 300 miler.
Yeah.
But me and some buddies, we're going to do a 24-hour race. We're going to run around a reservoir for 24 hours and see what mileage. We did it the other week up in Eltham, and my friend Ricky clocked up 110 miles in 24 hours, and we were all his crew in between getting loads of sleep.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that up on Dartmoor, and I said, Matt, it's that weekend that you're running. He said, all right, let's call each other. And that made me laugh.
Yeah. I was umming and ahhing about doing the triple that weekend, which there's a triple, continuous triple as well. But they've got quite good, strict crewing rules. Your crew has to follow you on the bike course at night, and then your crew has to run up and down Snowdon with you. And I just couldn't find anyone quick enough for then. And also, I'm probably just still fatigued. So I think be too much load on me, I reckon.
Sean, what's your resting pulse rate?
I don't know. I should measure it really. I might wear my watch tonight really. It was quite high during the 105 because I was in fatigue state, especially if I didn't eat enough or drink enough. So it was probably in the late 50s. The first week though, my average sleeping heart rate was 89 in the first week. Just, it's that classic Mike Tyson phrase, which is everyone has a plan until I punch them in the face.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. So my resting was 90 in that first week. A normal resting for me is probably late 30s, early 40s. It's probably around early 40s now, I guess. I haven't measured it.
Yeah, okay. Because mine's sort of, they told me at the hospital it was abnormally low.
Yeah.
Especially when I did the jogger, it's 38, and they put me in the intensive care place because they thought I was going to die.
Oh, really?
And then they said, you're not an extreme athlete by any chance? I said, well, not really, but I have just run the length of the country. They're like, oh, that'll do it. So it's about 44 now. So with this race coming up in September, this 24-hour race, be nice to sort of get it, I don't know, maybe down to 42 or something.
Yeah, I've not measured it much. I did everything on heart rate for this though. I kept my bike heart rate to around 110 average, sort of including stops and I had 75 junctions on my bike course, where I could have come to a zero stop. I often didn't, but I definitely went down to like 5 miles an hour. And but I sort of kept my heart rate below 120 for both the bike and the run. The swim, my heart rate was a bit higher, but bike and run, I kept it pretty low. So I did 90 hours a week of zone 1 training pretty much, maybe pushing into zone 2 a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that's affected my FTP, how it's affected my run pace. So I'm going for a bike ride tomorrow with some of the boys who join me regularly, and I've not run yet. My hip is still giving me issues, but I might see what a run does for me over the weekend. But yeah, it was weird. My heart rate didn't go above 120 for 3 months really.
And Sean, you must be fairly fortunate to live where you live, because where I live, yes, there is a swimming pool I think opens at 6 a.m, and yes, you can get in there and start doing lengths. I'm not sure if they cordon you off. I'm sure they would if you spoke to them nicely. But then you'd get on the bike if you took your bike there, and it's 5 miles from where I live. Well, it's 4 miles. It's in the city centre. Then you get on the bike, and any which way you go is either a very steep uphill or a steep downhill, not surprisingly followed by it's Dartmoor. So where you live, did you manage to find a flat route and get on the bike right after the swim?
Yeah, I did. And for me, it was important to do a continuous joining the dots as if it was an Ironman. I didn't want to have a transition where I drove somewhere. Because you lose time. I didn't want to. My T1 and T2 were pretty quick. On a good day, my T1 was 11 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, and my T2 was sort of 15 minutes on a good day. So I didn't want to lose another 15 minutes driving somewhere. I did lose quite a lot of time driving home. So basically, I live up in the hills where the pool is. So there was a little down to the flat area of where I live, and which goes into a bit of England. So it was mostly Wales with a little bit into England. And there's a tiny area that's flat. Each side of it is mountains, which is why I had this silly little course, which I did 3. So there was about 20K down to the course, 50K laps, and then 50, I can't do the math, 15K back or whatever. And yeah, to get enough, distance in, to get the 180K in within this little area did mean I had all these turns and lefts and rights and back on myself and forward and around that loop this way and then around the other loop that way. So it was all a bit confusing, which is why I had all these junctions, which slowed me down. I was probably at least half an hour slower, maybe even 40 minutes slower, just because the longest stretch I had where I could keep a good 22, 23 mile an hour was 5 miles, probably not even that really. No, it was about 5 miles. And I was lucky enough that it was nearby, but it would have been nice to. I remember looking at James Lawrence's course and he just had like 50 miles dead straight road type thing. Not quite, but I mean, it was perfectly flat. And I had similar elevation. I think I had 100 meters more, 100 and maybe 200 meters more than him, which, it's only 2 meters per mile more than him, really. So it was much of a muchness there. But definitely I could have, or wish I'd had a flatter, a straighter route, let's say,
Came last in my first ever triathlon, which was one of my proudest moments. Simply because I taught myself to swim at 48. I say swim, obviously did the Marines test, but I mean proper front crawl and understanding what you're doing. That I taught myself on YouTube at 48. Entered my first triathlon sometime after. It was the Olympic size one, so it was a mile swim. Come last out the sea, got on the bike. Had an old aluminium bike. Everyone had carbon fiber, so I was right at the back, and it was quite funny. My son was on the finish line saying, "Where's my daddy? Why is everybody finished, but my daddy hasn't finished?" And then they tried to kick me off the course, saying, "Sir, would you retire now, please, so we can all go home?" So I said, right, in 8 weeks' time, I'm going to do a quadruple Ironman. And not quite up to your level, Sean. It took me 7 days with a day traveling up to Nottingham for the Sherwood Forest 100-mile ultra up there. So 6 days altogether of exercise, day off in the middle. But I remember being on that bike, and I was getting on it at sort of 7:30 in the morning, and I was still cycling sort of by 8 at night. I mean, I must be really bad at cycling.
What distance were you doing in 14 hours?
Well, so basically I broke down. I can't exactly remember what it was, but I swam 10 miles, started off in the Lido pool, so the outdoor saltwater pool. And I hadn't figured the temperature change between midsummer and September was so significant. I was hypothermic within 3 miles. It was literally colder than, I mean, I was going down, and then I had the brainwave, switched to the indoor pool. So I hopped in the car, drove to the indoor pool. It was a couple of miles away, and I finished off in there. Then I hopped on the bike, cycled out to Dartmoor, which was where my dad lives, so I could use his home as a sort of base. And I remember whatever the additional bit is, I did it that night. And then I did 100 miles a day for 4 days to get the quadruple bit in.
Yeah.
I know professionals would do 100 miles in 3.5 hours or something, wouldn't they?
Yeah, 4.5 probably is.
But
is a
four
real
and
fast
a,
run.
yeah, it was taking.
That's super fast. Not many people do that. I think if around 5 hours is pretty quick, even, to be fair.
Yeah, I reckon it was taking me about 8. No,
It's
but
hilly though, probably.
Say again.
It's
Yeah, it was.
hillier.
It was fairly hilly. It was quite funny on almost the very last mile, probably the last 2 miles. I hit a thorn or something. First puncture I had, and all the gunk the puncture gunk that you have in the tire, it all started coming up like a fountain. So I quickly shoved my finger on it, spun the wheel around a few times, and it's resealed. And it's quite funny that it literally happened about a mile from. I thought, right, that's it. Go home, get in the car and drive to Sherwood Forest. And then I went the wrong way on the 100. So it ended up being 108, and that was
oh wow,
that was grueling. It was so hot. It was so hot. But it's like I say, I did 8 weeks training.
Yeah.
So, family, because you've got a little one,
two little ones.
Two.
Yeah, they're four and under 2. Yeah.
Yeah. How did they take it?
So, firstly, Caroline, my amazing wife, I won the wife lottery with her. She's just incredible, really. Just, she's self-employed and she was dealing with these little 2, and they're not at school yet. So they're running around most of the time. Our oldest goes to school in the mornings. But pick them up at 11:30 type thing. So, yeah, she was amazing. The youngest sort of didn't really know what was going on. He's 20 months old. The oldest, because he was at school in the mornings, I would send videos which they would play in assembly, and he then knew that I was doing a challenge. He called it like, "Daddy's on a challenge," and he knew it was important because they were playing the videos at assembly. So I wasn't, in his mind, just an absent father, which was nice. But by the end, probably for the last 3 weeks, every time I got home, he said, "Oh, Daddy, is your challenge finished now so you can play with me?" And I was like, "Oh, that's heartbreaking," So it was tough for Caroline. And the joke now is I did 105 irons. I'm now doing 105 days of ironing because I owe her a lot of chores around the house because she was amazing.
Sean, to finish off, so are you going to get another Guinness? How does that? Do they kind of, not rock up on your doorstep with a certificate or the?
Yeah, I mean, I have to fill out the application form and send it off. So that's still in the process. It's been verified by Welsh Triathlon already, so it already is a world record, and it's all on Strava, and it's sort of the internet decides whether you've got it or not. So they look, go through all the data, and I was very, really on it with heart rate monitor and power, and everything's there so that people can go and look. I put all my times up, all my splits on my website now, which is great. And I want to go through. We even kept a food log, so I'm going to try and get that into such a big spreadsheet. I want to try and get it into a nice visual little table of all the food I ate each day, with all the calorie count. So that's all going to happen soon. It's a long old process, trying to tick all the boxes and do all that sort of thing. But
what was your favorite food? We haven't got time to go into your whole diet, but what was your kind of go-to?
Full fat cream.
Full fat cream.
Yeah, you get a tub of it this big, and that's 1,500 calories. The slightly bigger tub is 3,500.
Wow.
I only lost 3 kgs during the whole thing. And I lost them a kg a month. The last kg I could have done with not losing. I lost a lot of power and speed and muscle mass on that one. But the other two, I got, I also didn't start heavy because I didn't want to run heavy because then my risk of injury goes way up. So I started at 70 kgs, which I was happy with. I knew I could get down to 68 and it'd be good weight for me, especially on the run, 2 kgs lighter. When I got down to 67, 66.8, I think was the lightest. I could definitely feel, and that's probably in line with my times going down a little bit. So I'm pretty happy though that I was I expected to lose more, but hoped to lose less. And the full fat cream was definitely a contributor to me just having those extra, I call them free calories, because you eat everything that you should eat. And then, at every feed station, I just quickly took a big gulp of the full fat cream and you sort of don't even notice it. Everything else you've eaten, which is important, all your antioxidants and your carbs and your protein, and there's some fat in the food I was eating as well. A lot of nuts, a lot of cheese, a lot of fruit, some veg, but not a lot of veg, which is something I wish I had eaten more of. But I sort of got into this system where it was sort of working and I was doing okay times. Once I had that in place, I was, I don't want to mess with it now. I don't want to substitute this with something else and then mess it up. And then, but I think if I did it again, I would definitely try a more high vegetable diet. And then 2,000 calories of cream, potentially 3,000 calories of free calories and cream, as well as that, just kind of kept me in the good weight zone pretty much.
Yes.
So, because it's quite easy to lose a lot of weight. Like Nick Butter, who ran around Britain, he went from 70 kgs to 60, I think. And he's taller than me. So yeah, I was happy. And again, I'm very good at ticking all those 10 boxes. So those 10 pistons of endurance, you've got to tick every single box every single day if you want to do good mileage on an event like this where there's no averaging, where you have to do the distance every single day. Because there's two types of these records. So there's I averaged a marathon a day record, and then I did an actual marathon a day, and they're sort of two very different things. Because the average one, you could do, 30 mile a day and then have a rest day once a week. And that is obviously different to actually doing 26.2 every single day.
Course.
So this one, there was none of that. If I was a mile short on the run, I couldn't make up that mile tomorrow. But it was game over. So you've really got to be on it. And I'm quite good at that. I'm quite good at micro-analyzing everything I do. If I have the tiniest little grain of sand in between my toes, I take my shoe off, take my sock off, clean between my toes. I'll waste those 3 or 4 minutes and put it back on, because I know that that'll lead to something else. It may not, but I do it. If I can feel when I'm dehydrated, I get a bit tingly on my skin. No, to micromanage that and then just down loads of water, have a bit of extra salt, and just keep on top of that. So I'm constantly just thinking about everything. How are my body's feeling? My pace, am I feeling good? And then, all right, if I'm going good today, I try and then, analyze the last 48 hours and go, right, why am I good? Right, I had physio yesterday because I was getting physio once a week. I was getting physio every day for the first month, and then I chose to stop physio in favor of sleep. And it was a game changer. As soon as I did that, my times improved. I felt better in my head. My motivation improved. Everything was, sleep over physio. I still needed physio. I definitely needed the physio at the beginning because there was a couple of tightnesses that happened, and if I'd left them unattended, they would have caused some tendonitis, I think. But once I was in my groove, the sleep fixed me absolutely. It almost became number one priority over everything else. Just get 8 hours, and I was getting that by sort of day 20 something, maybe 30. And then from then, I suddenly then realized this was sustainable. And a lot of it was down to the fact I was getting the good sleep. Nothing else mattered, really.
It's still quite something. You did the 102 and then obviously continued for another 3 days. That's was that hard to do, or was it the other way around? It was just easier to keep going.
Yeah, so I always knew I was gonna do 103, because I wanted to see how my body and mind would cope doing one, knowing I didn't have to do it. Because not only was it past the record, I also didn't commit to doing it. Like, had I gone into this going, I'm going to do 150, then I still 103 would have been something I would have had to do. But because I told everyone I was only doing Iron 102, I even called it Iron 102. The 103 really was something that I definitely did not have to do at all. But I wanted to do it just to see how I would cope. And I loved it. And then I thought, well, I was feeling good enough that I was in a place where I knew I could carry on. Definitely. I actually printed numbers up to 123 because I thought, well, that's the next cool number, 123. And I went into it at the beginning with the mindset of, oh yeah, the 102 is done. Like, that's a done deal. I mean, I'm actually even going to go up to 123 potentially. And for me, it was just manifesting this concept that, oh, it's already in the bag and I'm so confident I'm going to print numbers beyond. And that was just a coping mechanism of sort of, there's no other option. I'm going to do it and I'm going to smash it. It's just psychological little hack.
What do we think then to put there will come a day, won't there, when someone does one every day for a year?
Yeah, there will be 100%. And I could be that person. I just couldn't do that to my wife and kids. It wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
And I already know how to do it. So you do it in America, and you would have two locations. You'd have a summer location and a winter location, and you would find a town with a spider web of roads, and you would play the tailwind game. So every morning you'd wake up and you'd do the swim, and then you'd see which way the wind's going, and you just cycle with a tailwind, and then you'd run the marathon at the end, and then you'd get in your RV and you'd go back, and you'd do somewhere in the north for the summer and somewhere in the south for the winter. And if no one does this in the next 15 years, I'm going to do it because I think my kids will be old enough and they won't mind if I'm away for a year.
Not if I beat you to it, mate.
I'd love it. I have zero. Okay, that's a lie. There's a bit of yin and yang, right? So I'm probably 90% excited for people to break my records. But there's obviously the 10% ego hit that goes, oh, I'm not the best in the world anymore. But genuinely, it is genuinely 10%. I have no interest in holding this record forever. I feel like I would have failed on inspiring someone to do it. So if anyone's keen, I'll tell you how to do it. Email me. I'm actually, in the moment, I'm in the process of trying to find a woman to get the female record, which I think is 21. I think you would need to do. I'm not sure. There could be. I'm hoping the record's higher than that, but I'm not sure. So if anyone's out there knows what the female full iron record is, I'm really excited about trying to help someone do that. And actually, Caroline, my wife, has registered interest because she's an amazing swimmer and she can run. And she's good on the bike. She's just not ridden in 5 years. But once she picks up her pace a little bit, she'll smash it as well. So yeah, I would. I think someone will do it. The difficulty is you've got to want it. You've got to really want it. When that alarm goes off at 4:29 a.m., you can't have an ounce of you that goes, oh, I don't want to get up now. And I never had it. When my alarm went off at 4:29, it was a non-negotiable. Yeah, I put it in the same category as brushing your teeth.
Obviously, nothing on the level of what you've done, Sean. But I do remember when I did my joggle. Like, everyone kept trying to talk. Do you get this? People trying to talk you into stop, and you're like, "Can you just please shut up?" Oh, I had it quite a lot. But then again, I will be honest. When I was getting little, I only until I got a really bad shin splint. I don't know if my leg was broken or whatever, but that really made it hard. But up until then, I was just stressing the niggles because it was for charity, because I was trying to raise awareness of veterans' mental health and the suicide problem the veterans community's got. I was kind of like, I was laying it on a bit, you can say. And I think off the back of that, I had a lot of people were like, go and get a hotel. And I'm like, no, it's ultra marathon a day. to Land's End, but in the end, I got a bit shirty when it was fellow Marines were trying to talk me into stopping. I'm like, dude, what are you saying? Well, did we join the same corps?
Yes. Yeah.
But yes, Sean, listen, I honestly could chat to you all night. The only thing I'm concerned about is people have got such short attention spans now, unlike your good self, that they like short podcasts. And I wouldn't.
I'm the other way around. I'm like, if it's less than an hour, I don't bother because I feel like I'm just getting the headlines. I want the nitty gritty, man.
Yeah, I just don't want people to not watch this, if that makes sense. I'd rather you came back on the show and that we do it. We go for round two.
Okay, happy to do that. Absolutely.
Yes, I've just got 3 quick fire questions. What's the first one?
I'm notoriously bad at doing quick fires, as in
it's okay.
My quick fire answer might be 20 minutes, but
yeah, I'm in the same club. What was I going to say? So, okay, in all your shenanigans, I'm particularly thinking of swimming in deep bloody water. What was the most harrowing, alarming, scary moment?
Yeah. There's a couple. One is when I swam the length of Britain when we were rounding Cape Wrath. This storm came out of nowhere. We went from like perfectly almost glass water because we chose good weather. We're like, right, there's good weather. Nothing's on the forecast. There's a high pressure. All looks good. No wind. Happy days. And then as soon as we got there, these waves just came out of nowhere. And all of a sudden we're like, whoa, what's going on? And I was now... So Cape Wrath is almost a perfect square corner. And we were on the west side swimming north before I had to turn right to swim east. Now, that exact spot would have almost been impossible to get back to. To get back to it, we would have used some tide that I needed because the tide was going forward. We would have had to go onto the east coast, which meant to get back to that spot, we would have used the tide going the other way, and that would have pushed us too far. And then at slack water, it was hard. The boat wasn't sort of fast enough, and it was just complicated. And we all knew this. I couldn't stop swimming at that point. I had to get onto the north coast somewhere. So I bailed. I got out the boat, and we were like, "What should we do?" And we all sat there and go, "Well, I'm going to have to carry on swimming," and that was stupid because all of a sudden, I jumped back in the water. The boat went ahead, and then the boat was getting blown east way quicker than I was swimming. So what happened is the waves are so big. When the boat was in the trough of another wave, I couldn't even see the top of the mast. So it was big, huge rolling waves. I'm swimming east. They're getting blown east. Then would turn around on the engine and hold position while I swam towards them. They would then see me turn around and get blown away. And this happened for about an hour until we were on, is it Durness? I can't remember the first loch there that you can get to on the north. And then we cut in and found a buoy and anchored up for 2 days just on this random mooring buoy, just getting buffeted around before it was safe to go further down and into the calm water. So that was stressful. That was sort of, if that engine had broken on the yacht, game over for me because I wouldn't have been able to swim to Durness in the time before the tide changed. The tide would have changed before I got there. I would have then been pushed back towards Cape Wrath, and I wouldn't have got to the next beach. So I potentially would have just landed in this body of water 6 hours going one way, 6 hours going the other way. So, and there's cliffs, so I couldn't have gone ashore. So that was pretty bad from a weather point of view. And then the other bad one was in South America, when I was cycling around the world in the Atacama Desert. There was this really dodgy guys following me for a couple of hours. And every time they got near me, it just happened that one truck would pass and then they would back off or overtake and then hide further on. And I'd come up to them and then they would pull off, and they were definitely going to do something, probably just mug me and steal my bike. So I eventually found the only bush I could find because it's just desert. And I managed to randomly get hold of someone in the Peruvian police force via the South African embassy, and because I'm a South African citizen as well, I've got 4 passports, and so that one I had a police escort for a couple of days going into Lima. So that was where I feared for my life as well, but from a sort of different type of reason. I told you I'd babble on.
No, it's fine. I've got a few South America stories myself, but they're not very nice, so we'll give them a miss. Right, greatest moment then. What's been your there's the finish? Yes, or are you a bit like me? For me, I'll be honest, it's normally a bit of an anticlimax. There's normally like something I could have done better that day, or that it's not whatever, everyone thinks it's all great, but yourself, I could have done, but.
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you mean. I sort of have that where there's 2 things that's going on in my head. One is I go into everything believing wholeheartedly, and I genuinely believe it, that it's a done deal and I just have to turn up. It's not, but I have to believe that, because then if I go in thinking, I might not do it, you're going in with the wrong attitude. So I have to believe it. So when I do eventually cross the finish line, I'm like, I knew I would do it. So it is, as you say, a little bit of like, and then again, you're right. I start going, I wish I'd done this bit. I wish I'd done a bit quicker. If I'd done this, I could have been that bit quicker or faster, and that sort of thing. But then on top of that, there's just this immense relief that I don't have to do it again. Except on this one, I actually was quite sad, because I was feeling in a place where I could have continued and put some more light on the record.
Why did you actually stop? Was it because of family?
Yeah, I promised Caroline that I wouldn't be away and for too long. And once I'd got the record, I actually stopped. So I did 103 because I wanted to. I then got the internet. I got Instagram to decide whether I should do 104 or not. And obviously 71% of Instagram hates me because they said definitely carry on. To do 105, I flipped a coin. So I was like, heads, I carry on. Tails, I quit. And it was heads, so I carried on to 105. And then I sort of decided, I was umming and ahhing whether I should get the internet to choose again, but I sort of felt the internet would just keep going forever. So I didn't feel that was fair. And I didn't want to quit, because it felt like I was then pulling out, and I didn't want to pull out myself, because I was feeling okay. I knew I really genuinely believed I could carry on doing it. So I thought, right, well, I'm just going to let the coin decide. And when the coin tells me to stop, I'll stop. And as I said, I'd printed numbers up to 123. Caroline wasn't that keen on me going that far, but she said, if you need to get to 110 or 112, around there, then I'm cool with that. And I sort of said, well, let the coin decide. And then after 105, the coin said stop. And I filmed it. It's on Instagram. And actually, I just burst out crying because I was kind of sad, really. I was like, it's hard to explain. Imagine it felt like I had a job that no one else in the world has. And it's a really difficult job, but it's very rewarding. And the community and your work colleagues, so these are all the people that came and joined me, are amazing and inspiring. Would you give it up? No one else can get this job. It's a unique, once in a lifetime job, and no one else on the planet has it. That was hard to give up. The concept of that. If
you don't mind me asking, how do you fund it? Your lifestyle.
So a bit like any other sports person, man or woman, through sponsorship. For me, book sales, and then corporate speaking. So I go into,
of course, yes.
Go into offices, and I've done, Google, Microsoft, all the banks. Done a TEDx talk, and I love it. I love that side of it. I go and do a lot of talks at schools as well.
Is it hard to talk? Because I do a bit of speaking, not as much as I'd like, simply because not. I'd like to do more because the money's pretty amazing. It's kind of weird to get paid £2,000 for talking for 20 minutes, but that's the way it is, isn't it? All I was going to say is, I sometimes wonder if a corporation would want me speaking, because I'm all about sort of live your dreams, and jobs don't really work very well for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my message at all. You know, I'm a sportsman. I have a job, and I'm going to stay in my job. And my analogy, and when I go and talk to people, is find stuff that's difficult to do. Find a team around you that supports your idea, and then work your ass off to make that idea happen. And you've got all these little boxes you've got to tick along the way, and you've got to find a network of people, and it's going to be difficult. And when things go bad, you know, if I can overcome what happened to me, which no one else on the planet has ever done, then you can definitely do it in your own personal life. So that's the message I try, because I'm definitely I'm not a sort of quit your job and go and live your dream, because if I just was aimlessly wandering around doing stuff without the records, I would struggle with that. For me, I sort of, and it's an unpopular opinion, because a lot of people say, oh, it's not about the destination, man, it's all about the journey. I'm like, sod that. For me, the journey is the destination. It's just blinkers on. You know, Usain Bolt doesn't stop and analyze the track while he's running and smell the roses. You know, he wants to get to that finish line, right?
Yeah.
And I have the same mentality pretty much.
Sean, last thing then. Why?
I'm good at it. You know, it turns out I'm good at being miserable and cold and wet and hungry. And yeah, it would be. And the other thing is, I have to chase something in life. I'm a monkey terrier. I'm a monkey a lot of the time, and I love being a monkey, where I try new things, I break things, I fix things. I'm very inquisitive. I never do the same thing twice. I never go to the same restaurant twice. I never, like, in every part of my life, I'm very like to try everything. I'm the yes man to the nth degree, really, to my own fault, really, because I often overcommit to everything. But I also need to chase things. And I found doing these long, physically demanding challenges that take a long time. And on my website, I've actually recently listed the length of time each thing took me. And really, if it's under 10 days, I sort of forget about it. It's really got to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks or more for me to really get my teeth into something. And I found that's the best way to feed that terrier. And then once the terrier's, you know, full and content, then I'm happy for a while. And I feel like I'm a better husband. I'm a better father, because I've not got that itch in me to chase something for a while. And it also, as I said, it turns out I'm just quite good at it. So those are the reasons why, really, I'm better for it. It's my oxygen. I almost couldn't not do it. It would be harder for me not to do it in life than to do it. 100%. Yeah.
All right. The question I get asked, and this always knocks me for six, because I never feel like I've achieved anything. I think it's just a bit like yourself. I'm just living my life. But when people say to me, what's next?
Yeah.
And I always think, does there have to be a next? I hadn't really thought of it
Yeah.
But
no, I have lots of nexts. They're all top secret. It won't be for a couple of years. There's a couple of other big ideas that are in the pipeline. I can't talk about any of them, and I can't do them in the next couple of years. That's not fair on my family, because they are longer. I'm not sure they'll be harder. I think the 105 is the top of my mountain. I think is my Everest for difficulty. They might be more difficult in other ways, but not for pure physical and mental endurance. I think this is the one that I'll probably sit in the old age home and tell my grandkids over and over again when I got Alzheimer's. I'm like, do you know, once I did 105 full lines? And I'm like, shut up, Dad. The record's 500 now by that Kiwi guy. So yeah, I have other stuff, and I have a lot of smaller stuff. You know, I'm really interested to see if I could do a solo unsupported non-stop swim of Loch Ness, for example. That's 20 miles. So that would mean, so no touching land and having no support boat. So I'd have to drag all my own nutrition and hydration in some sort of boat or something behind me, and see if I could do a fully self-supported swim, which again is not a thing. It's not a thing, but I'm going to try and make it a thing. Swim packing wasn't a thing until I did a part of my triathlon around Britain. I did the 120-mile fully self-supported swim.
Sean, just to clarify, and I did see a bit of that, because didn't you do it on a bamboo bike?
I did the bike leg on a bamboo bike.
Yeah. Are you saying you've not only swum the length of Britain, but then did you go back and swim it all again, or
No, so I divided, when you divide the full lap of Britain into the same percentages as a triathlon, the swim leg, so it was 4,200 miles the complete route, and then the swim was 120 miles. So swim 120, bike 3,500, 820 odd run, and that gives you a lap of Britain in the same percentages, because obviously you've got a much shorter swim.
I see. Yeah. Right. I get it now.
And then that was fully self-supported, so which is easy to understand with a bike and running, but with the swim I had to drag this raft behind me, which had all my camping kit, food, water, casual clothes, and it was great. I actually loved it. And in fact, I'd love to do more. There's a company they're called Ruck Raft, where they make this flotation buoy, which is big enough to carry a rucksack. So you can do these swim runs, swim hikes, even where you could put all your camping kit in the rucksack and tie it on the raft, and then swim across a lake, and then get out the other side and put all your swim kit back into the rucksack, and then hike up a mountain and that. And I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that on the Caledonian Canal, actually, because you're not allowed to swim the canal bits, but you can swim the lochs. So you start in Fort William, hike the canals, swim the loch, hike the canals, swim the loch, and then I think again that would be quite a fun thing. So I've got lots of other little projects here and there. I'd like to get into a couple more, a bit like what Pritchard's doing, the 300 mile. I've never run 100 miles. I think that's definitely on the cards. Whether it's an official race or I just leave my front door and run until I've reached 100 miles, I don't know.
You're welcome to join us in September.
Well, I'm going to go and throw eggs at Pritchard instead.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Any other day, I'd be there.
And on that note, let's, if you'd grace us with your presence again, Sean, let's bang a show out with Matt. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be really good, actually.
After he's run his 300, that'll be, we can, knock some ideas around.
That'd be great. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll phone you when I'm there with him. I think, because I think is it on the 8th he starts? Or was it on the 9th?
Yeah, we're doing the 9th and 10th. I think he starts on the 8th, which would be
that's right.
Be the Friday. I
might see if I can go down on the 8th. We'll give you a call when we're there.
Yes, brilliant. Sean, stay on the line just so I can thank you properly. But could you just give a shout out to people that haven't read your books? Which one would you recommend they read first? And we'll put the link to it below. We'll put the link to all of them below.
Yeah. First, I don't know. That's hard one. I guess reading them chronologically makes sense. So the Land's End John O'Groats cycle book is first. Then it would be Cycling Around the World, Cycling the Earth, then Hull and High Water, the swim, then Running Britain, then the Big Mile Cycling, which is the Across Europe cycle record. That would be the order. Those are the 5 adventure ones. And I've written a kids book as well, but it's aimed at 10-year-old boys. Not an adult book, that one. But
do you do the audio books yourself?
So only on one, because I didn't get the option. I can't know. The publishers sort of had their own in-house people. So it's a shame. In fact, my Cycling the Earth, I only found out I had an audiobook when someone tweeted me about it saying, "Oh, we've just listened to your book on audio." I'm like, "What? It's not Audible? No way." And it's a shame. I have read Big Mile Cycling, and there is a potential option. I don't know when my rights run out, where I could re-record 2 of the others, so Running Britain and Hell and High Water. And the Land's End John O'Groats cycle. Those are the 3 that I can potentially re-record, but I've looked into it, and Audible sort of, they don't make it that super easy. So yeah,
yes, I've still
it's a
got
shame really, because I think people want it and expect it now. But no, I just didn't have the option, sadly.
yes. Hell or High Water's on audiobook, right? I'm guessing.
They're all on audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I don't read them, which is a shame.
Yeah.
It actually is probably better, because I'm terrible at reading out loud. So maybe the people who read them probably do a much better job than I would have done.
Well, I know what I'm going to listen to next. So there you go. You've made
Lovely.
what was it? What you made 13p or whatever we get paid for our books. It's never very much, but
No.
yes, Sean, absolute legend. Like I say, stay on the line just so I can say thank you properly. But can't wait to chat again. Everybody at home, wow, there you go. Look, no excuses now, isn't it? I just say run round the block in the morning. Just do that, and your life's going to be infinitely better. You don't have to do an Ironman every day, but every journey starts with one step. Hey, I could be a Chinese philosopher. Much love, everyone. If you could like and subscribe, really appreciate it. Ciao, ciao.